Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. If you're new here, my name is Anna, and on this channel, I'm sharing our journey of learning how to turn our home into a homestead. Today, I am continuing the long-standing kind of series that I've been doing on things that I like to do to stay healthy or things that I want to try to improve my health. This is one of those things where I want to try it to see if it will improve my health, improve my immune system, things like that. You see the fire cider going all over the place, and so I figured that I would make it now. It is starting in end of July, middle to end of July. I think it's the 18th. Anyways, so we're starting it now because it's such a long fermenting time that hopefully it should be completely done by cold and flu season. So basically there's no recipe. We're kind of just following a principle, and that's just throwing a bunch of the stuff that has a lot of like antibacterial, antimicrobial, has a lot of heat to it, and it just has a lot of good benefits and properties to it. And you just throw it in a jar, pour on top of a bunch of apple cider vinegar, raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, and let it ferment for a while. So that's what we're gonna do. I was able to go to the store yesterday and get a bunch of jalapenos, lemons, some turmeric, and we already had onions and garlic, and then of course horseradish. I think horseradish is like the main thing in this recipe that is pretty consistent among like everybody who makes this is the horseradish. So my understanding, I've seen a couple of videos on this, and the one who really inspired me the most was Jen over at the Cider Homestead, and she made this a while back, and I've always wanted to make it ever since. I even bought the ingredients for it a month or two ago, maybe 3 months ago, and just with everything that was going on at the beginning of spring, I just completely forgot all about it, and then I came across it and it had all molded. So I felt terrible, but now I'm redeeming myself. I just bought this yesterday, nice fresh stuff, and we're gonna do it and make some good healthy shots for later on when it gets really crummy weather and crummy health going around. So I think I might have enough to make 2 jars of this stuff. I'm not entirely sure. I have more onions if I need a little bit of a filler for that. So we're gonna go ahead and just chop all this stuff up. I'm gonna put the jalapenos and the smaller stuff in the bottom of the jar just so that the other stuff can kind of hold it down. So let's get chopping. And you can use any kind of pepper that you want to. If you have other types of peppers, like I have peppers in my garden right now that are growing. They're about like, this tall. But, someday they will grow into real fruit and I will be able to use them. So basically, we're just gonna chop them pretty big pieces. I'm putting them in the bottom mostly because of the seeds. I'm not gonna take the seeds out. I think that's possibly preferential. I don't know, but I enjoy heat. So I am not gonna shy away from putting heat in my jar. That's one of the main things that I really like about the idea of this is the heat. That's more even. Okay. And another reason that this is such a great recipe is that anytime you ferment, not a great recipe, but a great idea of something to make, is that anytime you ferment anything, kind of the typical principle is that it enhances all of the health benefits that are in it and creates other ones as well. Like I know folic acid is one that's really amped up when you ferment it. There's a few different vitamin C as well. Especially, I know for a fact it's like that in sauerkraut. So, I mean, I would assume that probably carries over to a lot of different types of ferments, but don't put me 100% on that. And so this is turmeric. This one doesn't have any real heat to it, but it has a lot of beneficial properties to it. So I'm just gonna add it to it. It was fairly inexpensive, especially for raw, like organic turmeric. I was rather surprised at how inexpensive it was at the store, so I got it. Oh yeah, this is definitely going to be more than enough for 2 jars. And the lemon we're adding just to kind of help it boost the vitamin C content, and it's also very antimicrobial of pretty much all varieties. And I'm not gonna cut these up super tiny because the smaller that I cut it up, the more difficult it's gonna be. Oh, I've never seen molded garlic. I should have thought this one through, huh? The more difficult it's gonna be to hold it down under the brine. I do believe it is fair to say that this garlic is chopped. So I'm going to make the entire recipe, and then I'm going to add a little bit of garlic to it later on once I actually get some garlic. Basically what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to squish it down and like get all the stuff in there. Because there's plenty of room, because I cut the pieces so big, there is definitely more than enough room to squish it down to fit another half. One of the things that you can probably do in order to speed up the fermentation time on this is to cut it into smaller pieces. I am somebody who likes kind of the long range ferments. I like them to ferment for a long time. I feel like it just kind of enhances the flavors better. And that's why I don't typically use starters or anything like that, because it kind of skips some of the fermentation steps and it makes it not have quite as much, I don't know, like umami flavor. Like there's so many different, there's kind of like with compost, like each temperature that the composts at is a different bacteria doing a different thing in it, and so it blends to different bacteria being in your compost. And same principle sort of with this, but without the temperature, but it's a certain length of time. Like within a couple of days, this bacteria does something, and then at a few more days, this bacteria does something, and it's also to do with the pH level. There's so many different awesome things that go along with it, and so, I mean, it's not bad to add a starter and to speed up the fermentation process, especially if you want to start, getting on the fermentation right now. But for me, I'm more of a long game kind of person, and I like the complex flavors that come with long fermentation times. It's all just a matter of preference and patience. If you have a preference and you have the patience, I recommend doing it this way. So now all we're going to do is we're just going to top this off with apple cider vinegar. Obviously, I need another bottle. And you want to make sure that it's raw with the mother. This is the stuff that I'm able to get at Costco. They used to have the Bragg's apple cider vinegar, but they stopped carrying it, and now they just have like a Kirkland signature. It's still raw, it's still unfiltered, it still has the mother, so it's not Bragg's, but it still works. And I am actually curious. I've never actually tested apple cider vinegar to see what the pH actually is. So I got pH test strips and some apple cider vinegar. So let's do an experiment, just out of curiosity. I would say definitely like 3.2 on the money. I highly doubt you can see it from here, but it's 3.2. So just so you know. And I'm sure the longer it ferments, the more acidic it will become. You want to make sure that you're leaving about 1.5 inches of headspace here, because this is going to expand. It's going to expand with a lot of different things are going to determine how it expands. The main one is the movements of the moon and the development of this carbon dioxide inside of here. Little bubbles that are going to form. And so obviously, naturally, since the bubbles are forming, the liquid is not going to disappear. So it gets pushed up and pushed up and pushed up. The tighter you pack your jars, the more that is going to be an issue. But there's not a whole lot that you can do to control the movement of the moon, and that affects the tides and all that sort of stuff. It affects all water, including the water in your body, and it also affects the water or the liquid that is in the apple cider vinegar, and that's going to cause it to contract and to expand with the movement of the moon and the moon cycles and all that sort of stuff. Pretty interesting stuff if you want to look into it. If you guys are curious about that, I can try and do some kind of video. Just let me know down below if you're curious about that or interested in how that affects ferments. So anyways, let me go grab another bottle. Oh yeah, it's consistent, 3.2. Okay, so I'm just gonna pour this on top, fill it up. Again, 1.5 inches headspace. And if you're not using a big hefty glass weight, you might be able to get by with a little bit less headspace, but I like to make sure that I leave more than enough headspace for these little things. These are the fermentations kit from Mason Tops. I love these things. I mean, they are amazing. They are certainly not required, but they're amazing. And so I'm just gonna make sure I top it up to where it reaches the stone. And another thing that you have to keep in mind is that while the liquid and the contents of the jar might expand, the actual ingredients inside of there will begin to wilt and kind of break down. So you have to keep an eye on the stone in there to make sure that it is still actually holding down the ingredients that are inside the jar, because it'll break down over time. And so the weight will begin to kind of settle and it'll go off to the side and things like that, because it's not packed super tight. If this was a jar of like super overpacked like sauerkraut, you don't have to worry about it at all. As long as you have a covering over the top, you're good to go. You still need to check on it, but not so actively, and you're not very likely to have any issues with it. But with this, I mean, I don't know if you can see from that far, but you know, it is definitely has some gaps in it and some airspace. So we're just gonna put that on, put this here and this here. And one of many reasons that I really like these Mason Top kits here is that they just make fermenting so hands-off and so easy. If you don't have this fermentation kit, like I said, you don't need it at all. You just need to make it part of your regular routine to go and check on your ferments more often. And you have to kind of, if this were, you know, pretend this was one of these kind of lids, you know, and you got it on here. You just come by like once a day, maybe twice a day. After a couple of days, once the fermentation process really starts going and you see the little bubbles inside there, you got to come along, you got to kind of what they call burp it. And that's where you kind of crack it and then close it back up again, to let the buildup of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, but you have to let it out. Otherwise, you can have explosion on your hand. Most likely scenario that you're gonna have is that this lid is gonna buckle. And what's gonna happen when that buckles is that a whole bunch of the buildup that's inside of the jar is just gonna come rushing out through that buckling of the lid. It's really unlikely that it's gonna explode with one of these lids on there. It's possible, but I've personally never had it happen, not even had it come close, because this lid typically will buckle under the pressure and let it out. And that's because that's pretty much, I think, what this is. These jars, and these jars in particular, are designed to do is to be strong and to be able to withstand the pressure of the pressure canner. So, you know, the lids are much more likely to actually buckle. And that's been my experience. I've had them buckle a few different times. I had a buckle when I was making the honey garlic, and I think maybe one other one. I don't think it was two. I think it was one other one. I can't remember exactly what it was. But anyways, if you use these, you don't have to worry about that. You just have to, in the beginning, you have to kind of squeeze the nipple top here to make sure that those little slits are open, there's no obstruction, and the carbon dioxide can easily get out of the jar, and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it. So we're gonna set this in a cool-ish, dark area. You don't want it to be hot. Right now it's the middle of summer, so I'm gonna stick it inside of like a cabinet somewhere that doesn't have any outside walls, and just a place that it can just stay cool enough. You don't want it to get hot, because then it'll act the same as if you were to add a starter, and it'll ferment way too quickly, and oftentimes it'll just start to mold. You want to keep it, I think it's between 55 and 75. Don't quote me on that. I usually don't go that high though. I like to have it all fermenting on the colder side. If I can get it to be like 65, that's ideal, because like I said, I like the long-term, slow, cool ferments, and that totally works for me. So that's what I like to do. So I'm gonna just find it a nice, cool cabinet, keep it in there, cover it up, make sure it's protected from light. So you wanna put a nice, densely woven cloth over it, and that'll keep out the bugs, and then it'll also will keep out the light, when the light can damage and start to break down the actual ferments inside the jar. So if that's not enough rambling, I'll see you back here when we're ready to check on these ferments. All right, so it has been 101 days since we made our fire cider. After about a month and a half or so, I went ahead and I kind of tended to it and closed it up kind of for some more longer term fermentation. And you can see I put the metal lid on here and it's just been sitting there this entire time since then. There's been a little bit of overflow. I don't know if you can actually see that on camera, but nothing crazy. And you can definitely, I think you can definitely see the change in it, the change in the fire cider. It's just changed like a lot with the color and just with everything. It's very bland looking, like it's almost like the nutrients were absorbed into the liquid through the color of it. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but so we're ready for the next step. And the only thing I've really done with this is kind of just looked at it. And you can see there is nothing on top at all. Whoa. Wow. That is potent smelling for sure. Okay, so what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna dump it off. And with this, I want to make sure to note you don't want to use any kind of metal or anything like this. This is fully fermented and incredibly acidic. So you just want to make sure that you're just using like plastic and glass and things like that. And that's about all you want to do.
So that.
You want to try it?
Let me smell that.
You sure?
And then you just call me when you're ready. Try test that stuff out.
Okay.
All right.
Robert and I both share a love of hot things, so I think he's kind of excited about it.
Put my shirt on.
I gotta use this audio. I'm recording.
Okay.
See, it's powerful stuff, isn't it?
Is it?
You want to try it?
Hold me down, so I don't.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so like I said, this has been fermenting for 101 days.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
No, full shot.
Oh, yeah.
You can do it.
I just ate spaghetti, a bunch of spaghetti.
It's gonna help you digest it.
Okay. All right.
Don't. Okay. You just drooled. Is it that strong? All right. Dang it, now you're making me nervous to try it. Is it that bad? Okay. Is that a hiccup?
Oh, no.
Or are you just trying to talk?
It's not hot.
What is it, sour?
It's just some astringent and bitter flavors I've never had before.
Could be this.
It's like wants to be pickle juice, but it wants to be barbecue sauce, but it wants to be salad dressing, Italian salad dressing, but it wants to be a bunch of stuff. But it's like you know, like when the Transformers from the 1980s, a bunch of Transformers, they combine, they make one robot.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is.
I don't think I've ever heard fire cider described
crazy...
like that. Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh.
It's not even hot.
That's not hot.
It's not hot at all.
But it's bitter and astringent, but in a...
I need you to use more peppers and stuff in there, I guess.
Oh, it's not hot at all. Maybe it's hot to the normal person.
I don't think so.
You think so? Oh.
Yeah, this stuff is just super weird smelling and weird tasting. I feel like kind of warmed a little bit, but this particular one had no heat whatsoever. It just had it has a strange flavor. A very strange flavor. I don't even know. Okay, so you can see the ferment level is probably somewhere between here, between a 3.2 and a 3.4. Or 3.2 and 3.6, pardon me. So it's probably about 3.4. It's definitely not up in this area here. But, so yeah. Okay, so with this one, I'm going to try another one here.
Yeah.
This is the other bottle jar.
Oh, is it not old? What's the difference?
No, not much. Just a different jar.
Oh, okay. Same amount of time and everything.
Yeah, but it's not anywhere near the smell, like the heat. It doesn't smell as much.
Okay, you need a smelling salt. Get you pumped up. It's like a bodybuilding contest.
Yeah.
Power. Go, ah!
Is that what those are?
Yeah, go, ah! Go, ah!
Oh.
Yeah,
I don't know. Okay. Ready?
Oh.
Yeah. Ah. That one's weirder tasting. It's hard to really put my finger on what the taste is. Part of me wonders if the horseradish maybe was not quite as fresh as it could have been, but I don't know. So that's really all there is to making fire cider. There is no actual recipe for it. You just kind of want to get a lot of the antimicrobial, antibacterial kind of health boosting ingredients, and you throw them in there and top it off with apple cider vinegar. And it's very, it's just user's choice. You can do just about anything that you want with it. As with any fermentation process, this one, you just add whatever spices you want. The next time I make this, I'm probably gonna add like habaneros or some ghost peppers or something to it just to give it some heat, because there's no heat to it at all whatsoever. I'm really surprised based on how much jalapenos that I used in there. And the horseradish, so that kind of just makes me think that they may not have been as fresh as they could have been. So I hope that you enjoyed watching me make this recipe, and I hope that you decide to make it yourself if you haven't already. And if you have, or if you plan to, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to know your plans coming up for fire cider, given that cold and flu season is just around the corner. It is, I think it's October 28th now, 29th? October 29th. So flu season right around the corner. We have all this toilet paper shortage stuff going on, so you want to do just about anything that you can to really boost your immune system. And this is definitely something that you can add to your arsenal of things that you can do to keep yourself feeling well, as well as just to help you feel better when you're not feeling well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to go ahead and hit the subscription button down below if you haven't already. I would love to have you joining in with us in making all of these different types of fermentations and canning, all sorts of food preservation stuff. And if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It is a great encouragement to me, and I love to hear back from you guys in the comments section down below. We'll see you next time. Bye.